Director for Community Engagement on the Entrepreneurship Center's team. Today, I just want to welcome you all to our second series of the Fireside Chats. We are co-hosting with Launch Chapel Hill, our partners, and we will be hosting these series. We started in August with Carpe, and I will continue today with Niki and Ritika from Sani, and we will make sure to just share their authentic journey, the good, the bad, the ugly of entrepreneurship, and we will continue to have the series through this fall. So today we'll have Vicki Gibbs, the Executive Director for the UNC Entrepreneurship Center, the eShip Center, moderating and asking questions, and then again, Niki and Ritika from Sani sharing their journey. So we'll have a time for you to ask questions, but feel free to use the chat and mute yourselves. But again, we want everyone to be able to see each other during this journey. So do know that you can't see everyone on the screen. So we'll go ahead and get started with Vicki asking questions and start the conversation.
Great. Thanks so much, Keisha. Really appreciate it. And Ritika and Niki, thank you so much for being with us today. As Keisha said, this is a part of our Fireside Chat series that we're doing in partnership with Launch Chapel Hill. And we're taking turns every other month. And Launch Chapel Hill is focusing on those real entrepreneur stories, talking about launching the company. And then we're the Entrepreneurship Center talking with entrepreneurs about their real stories about, after launch, what happens after that and all of the sort of roller coaster times that you have. And Ritika and Niki, they're in it, they're living it. And so I'm really excited about the learnings that we're going to get from y'all. So as we get started, I would love it if y'all could each just give us a brief introduction of yourselves and a little bit of your background and kind of how y'all came to found Sani.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, first of all, thank you for having us. Really excited to be here. My name's Niki and
I'm Ritika.
Yeah, and I graduated from UNC in 2015. So I studied political science, minored in business, and went on to do federal consulting with Deloitte for all of 6 months before realizing that it wasn't the right fit for me. And around that time, I was catching up with a former boss from one of my internships while I was at UNC. So I'd worked for a startup accelerator called Matter. And as I was catching up with him and mentioned that I didn't love consulting, he was like, I'm growing the team from 2 to 6 people. Why don't you come be my chief of staff? And so moved to San Francisco, did that. And then 6 months into that, he asked me to move to New York to start the office over there. So it was really because I was the most portable. Everyone else had like a partner and some had kids. And I was the one that could say, yes, I can just move next week. So that was a fantastic opportunity. I got to be on the program and investments team over there. And then as the team expanded more and more over there and my role was changing, I was looking to something new and was looking to stay in New York. And so I was doing some sort of internship, sort of part-time things. And Ritika came to visit me. She was doing her own internship over there. And while we were there, we had to figure out what to wear for an upcoming Indian wedding. And, it all went from there. But I'll let you tell your side of your story first before we get into that.
So hi, everyone. My name is Ritika. I am currently a sophomore at NC State studying fashion. And I do not have a crazy, prior work experience since I am a sophomore. But Niki's going to go into the story more about how we started Sani and how I was actually in high school at the time. I was going to New York because I was participating at the Girls Who Code program at Amazon's headquarters, and she was a free couch, so I stayed with her, and yeah, that's when Sani really started. So you want to go into it now?
Yeah. So Sani obviously started from a personal need. So we were shopping for this upcoming family friend's wedding and had grown out of all of the other clothes we had, so kind of had to start from scratch. And the first thing we did was visit a bunch of South Asian hubs. So like Edison, New Jersey is a major South Asian hub near New York. It's about an hour and a half, a little bit more away, you know, when you don't have a car and you're taking like subway to this, to that, but made the trek, didn't find anything we liked. Looked online, tried to find like cool companies in the US that were, you know, bringing over the best of South Asian fashion here. Couldn't find anything, went with a sketchy website anyway, and what we got was not at all representative of what was on the website. And finally, in desperation, we, you know, woke up at weird times to WhatsApp video call our grandmother in Delhi, India, and asked her if she could take us around to a couple of boutiques near her house. And as you can probably imagine, that wasn't the best shopping experience. And so we ended up just borrowing some things from our friends, mixing and matching, and just making do with what we had. But we were not at all happy with the experience. And when, you know, we were in New York thinking about that, talking about that, like what exactly did we miss, and talking to friends and family members, we realized that everyone was kind of settling. People weren't excited about the designs available to South Asian Americans, and they weren't excited about the experience for shopping for those clothes either. And so we decided to start Sani to address that. And it was really at first like, let's make some outfits for ourselves and our friends. And, you know, we got a really good response, and it kind of went from there.
Cool. Well, it sounds like y'all focused on what the problem was, right? You did some initial customer discovery, right? Which I know that, you know, Velvet at launch, that's something she really, you know, hones in on. And it's super important, right? Because that helped really direct y'all to an actual problem that you were able to solve. Well, the next question I have is, Ritika, for you around balancing. So you're a student, and we have some student entrepreneurs that I see in the audience, many of whom are at launch or were at launch. How do you balance being an entrepreneur and being a student and prioritize things?
Yeah, so it's not peaches and roses, but thankfully it's made a lot easier because I have a pretty good co-founder. She's not terrible. But yeah, so I would say the balance is having someone you can rely on during weeks when I would have an exam and text her saying, hey, I really can't do more work right now. I need to concentrate on that. And she would take over some stuff for me. That's what's really helped me a lot. In addition to that, it's really all about time management, but thankfully enough, the classes I'm taking at NC State have directly applied to Sani. And it's crazy because you don't often find yourself seeing the coursework you do come to life in the real world that quickly. At least I don't think so. But when I'm learning stuff about quality control in my fashion product analysis class, I can go straight to Sani and look at our quality control checklist and be like, oh, that needs to be added, that needs to be added, that needs to be added. So it's been really helpful actually being in school right now and running a business at the same time. And I will say, I think that's the reason that Sani's flourished in some ways, because we've had access to really great resources being at the Wilson College of Textiles at NC State.
That's awesome. And Nikki, you're balancing stuff too, because we were just talking before about how you're teaching a class and things like that. I know we have, you know, entrepreneurs who are trying to, you know, do something on the side or make that decision. When do you go all in? You know, can you talk through just kind of that personal process that you went through?
Yeah. So we started Sani in late 2017, and that was when I also decided to move back to North Carolina from New York, because New York rent did not make sense when I was starting a new business, especially with my sister, and it made sense to kind of be together. But when I first moved back, I was looking for a full-time job to do like while starting Sani. And honestly, but I had some savings, so I had a cushion before I really needed to, you know, figure it out. And I just wasn't getting excited about anything. And so 6 months into that search, I switched to figuring out what can I do part-time and really start doing Sani more so full-time. And I luckily got some consulting opportunities with PRX. It's a podcasting company, and they had been involved at Matter. And I was telling everyone I knew, I want to do Sani. I can't do it full-time right now because it's not making enough money. So who do you know that might like need someone or need something? And so I really had to put myself out there to kind of make that happen. And even now, anything we make with Sani gets poured straight back into the business. And I know plenty of entrepreneurs do it that way. Plenty will raise some money, and there are all these different ways of kind of making it work for you personally. For me, like, I'm okay with just keeping my expenses super, super low right now and just doing it between kind of the two of us. And so, yes, I still take on opportunities here and there where it makes sense and where it also feels additive. And I think that's been a big thing as well. Like when I was working with PRX, we were running design thinking boot camps for journalists. And so it felt very additive. The class I'm teaching now at UNC is media entrepreneurship, and it's teaching design thinking. And so again, these things are such good reminders for me as well. And I'm like, oh, we haven't done a lot of customer interviews recently, and I'm telling these students to do that. So that's just been really helpful for me. And I've been lucky to find opportunities that are really additive.
And I will add one thing to that too, that she said, Nikki's also pretty good at finding her own like entrepreneurial activities, because during all this, she started helping college kids with their essays, which might just seem like a complete tangent, but in the end, like whatever you find is honestly a good thing to do. And that gave her flexibility. But I know it probably wasn't her favorite task of the day. But I just wanted to add that too, about like the part-time jobs she does, the different side hustles she has going. So
I think it's really good lessons, because if you know that like that's what you want to do, is to make that cut at some point, finding like a pathway there, but going into it eyes wide open, right? And being able to make those budget decisions too. So that, and if you're single or you're with a family, like those are big decisions, and it takes planning too. And so those are like part of the entrepreneurship journey that people don't generally talk about, but like that's the real, you have to do that if you get there, right? So let's talk a little bit about y'all working together, right? So you've got, Nikki, you have the business background, Ritika, you've got the fashion and the textile background. And so very similar. I come from high-tech startups where we would have, a technology founder, subject matter expert, and a business founder. So y'all have the subject matter expert and business founder. So how do y'all balance things with each other? How has that been? Has it always been smooth? We have, entrepreneurs in the audience who, some may be a single founder, some may have partners, some may be considering getting a partner. So talk a little bit about that.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Has it always been smooth? No. Starting off, Nikki and I really had to figure out how to work with each other in a completely different context, right? Being a sister is one thing, but being business partners is a completely different ballgame. But I will say one thing that helped us is we come from a pretty entrepreneurial background. My dad and his 7 siblings actually run a business together. So we grew up seeing how family works and how businesses are run when you're working with your siblings. But it was still a lot of trial and error when we ultimately were put to the test. Yeah. It was figuring out her working style, my working style, with hers being more send me a Google Calendar invite, and mine being like, just text me whenever you want, that kind of thing. But I will say that once we really figured out the relationship that works best for us, it's worked really well. And don't get me wrong, we still have fights occasionally, but we know each other's strengths and weaknesses. We know how to push each other just to the right point. And we have this like inherent trust that I think is sometimes hard to find with a complete stranger co-founder, but growing up together in the same household has kind of plugged it in.
Yeah.
Do you add anything?
No, I think that's perfect. I mean, well, the only thing I'll add is it continues to change too, right? Like the style of working together, the way we divided stuff was different even a year ago than it is now. So, you know, just because we are sisters and do have that trust and everything, like it is still continuously evolving. And like Ritika's taking on more and more of the design work. So we used to co-design at the beginning, but you know, that you're right. She is totally becoming like more of a subject matter expert in that. And I'm, you know, focusing more on like the business things. But, you know, I think something that's been hard for us is we are co-founders because we build off of each other. And so traditionally we've done a lot of things together. Like so many different tasks together, when it probably made more sense from like a time perspective to divide responsibilities even more. And so as the things we have to do have increased as the business is like, you know, slowly growing, we're trying to figure out, you know, I always come to her like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And she does the same with me. And that doesn't allow us to always like do the deep work that we need to. So that's been one of the hardest things, going from that, like you two are just sitting next to each other like all day, every day, to, all right, how do we start, you know, making this kind of more efficient?
Well, I think there's a couple different things in there. And there was also a question in the chat that I'll bring up in a half second. But, you know, as entrepreneurs, we're all natural creatives, right? And so we're always like, oh, we could solve this problem and then that problem. And then like we're solving a bunch of problems instead of really going deep, right? And so having that self-discipline of like, okay, well, let's pull it back and let's go deep here. Let's really get to it. Let's get efficient. It's the discipline side of entrepreneurship that is what will make you successful and enable you to scale and grow, right?
Absolutely.
One of the questions that came from Howard Aldrich, who I was just talking to you about, the sociology professor, who's awesome. He was asking about the family business, and, you know, did y'all ever consider going into the family business, or was that like not your cup of tea, or did they think you didn't have enough experience? Like, talk about that dynamic.
Yeah. Well, so I used to spend every summer in high school working for the family business. And you've also like done stints here and there. Like all of us kids have had to do kind of our stints over there to understand, you know, what our parents and family members do. And I think that's been really, really good. That being said, I personally was not ever really excited to kind of continue doing what they were doing. And they've also been amazing about saying like, you all do need to go out into the world. And if one day you do want to come back and like help us run this thing, that's fine. But go have your experiences, and then, you know, you will probably be even more beneficial to us if you can bring that back. But I know it's not personally been on my radar.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think our family encourages us. They'll definitely take the help if we want to help them, but in terms of like finding our own path, they want us to explore and look into new passions. And I think they know that like we will have a home there if we want to have a home there, but at the same time, they don't want us to think that's our only option.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So let's move to talking a little bit about like the path of Sani. So we've covered like kind of how y'all got started, some of the dynamic in your relationship and partnership. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about, because when we met before, you know, you talked about how y'all had early market traction and then you kind of departed from that and then kind of, you know, we're trying to find your way. To tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, I can start and then you want to add in anything. So the first year was really about the ground game, specifically in North Carolina. So Sani started with us selling occasion wear, right? For things like Indian weddings, like what we had started out shopping for. And we realized very quickly that that was something that people needed to feel, they needed to try it on, like there had to be this sort of tactile experience. And so we would be out like doing pop-ups at different cultural events, or sort of charity fashion events as well. We were doing a lot of those. We did our own standalone fashion show, and it was really about, let's get people to trust us over here. And people in North Carolina aren't only going to weddings in North Carolina. So, they'll be wearing our clothes, they'll start spreading the word, and we'll be able to grow kind of like that. In year 2, what we did was a pretty big departure from that. I think honestly, part of it was a lack of patience and thinking too much about what other people were doing, like our competitors. We saw our competitors had a mostly digital presence. They were doing a lot with influencers, and just, that's how they were focusing on their own growth. And we were like, oh, this is so much more scalable. Like, we can just find the right people online and everyone will start buying from us. And what we didn't realize is that actually all of our competitors had some sort of ground game beforehand. Like, there had been different manifestations of their business. Like, one used to have a boutique in LA, and that was shut down a couple years prior, and then they started their brand, and we just didn't dig into it beyond, nope, we've been doing the wrong strategy, we need to do this one now. And so we started focusing on influencers and stuff like that, and did not also continue the ground game. And that was really just a matter of, we thought it was either or in terms of how our time was spent. I think looking back, we could have done both, but anyway, so our sales declined in year 2. And, things change a lot with even influencer and social media strategy. And so the things we were doing that our competitors had been doing a year before already weren't working as well. And so we were like, what are we doing wrong? And kind of, going into year 3, which is where we are now, we were really excited because we had a bunch of events lined up. Like, we had a big fashion show with the UNC Children's Hospital that was supposed to happen in April. We had this pop-up strategy for all along the East Coast. We were launching on Rent the Runway. I'm thinking like at the beginning of this year, we were launching on Rent the Runway. So we were like, that'll be great for digital as well, right? And that trust. And it felt like it was all kind of, we were starting to finally like merge the strategies in a way that had started to work for us kind of at the end of last year. And then, of course, the world changed, and that's kind of where we are now. Did I leave anything out?
No, I think you hit on that pretty well.
So with that, you talked about how you got the Rent the Runway deal, and that was kind of like, we're throwing all our eggs in, we're going for it, right? Can you tell the audience a little bit about that story? Because I think it speaks to you taking a chance, but you feeling really confident that this was the right way to go and just going for it.
Yeah. You want to talk about that one? Yeah.
So preface, that deal was, I think, a year and a half in the making, right? Before it actually launched. But it all started when Niki and I, right when we were starting Sani, when we thought about the perfect partner, Rent the Runway was the first one that came to mind, right? We were like, that's the platform we want to be on. We didn't want to do rental ourselves because that's a whole nother ball game, but we said that's the platform we want to be on. So the first year we didn't really try and go get at it or anything like that. But then actually, I don't even know what's like inspired you, but one day Niki was
actually,
like,
she, the entrepreneur in residence.
There we go.
He's what inspired me.
So one day Niki is like, I'm just going to email Jen Hyman. And I was like, okay, Niki, like, good luck with that. So she goes on her UNC email, which gets a lot of lot more response than our personal emails, actually.
And I was doing a part-time job at UNC for context, so that's why I had that email.
And she types in every variation of a Rent the Runway email that you can find. So like Jen at Rent the Runway, Jen Hyman at Rent the Runway. I think you had like 6 on that email. And we basically send her an email saying, hey, we're Sani. There's a gap in this market. You should be a big player in it. And we want to be the people on your platform to do it. And it was kind of one of those shot in the dark emails. You don't know if anyone's going to respond, but you just send it and see what happens. Turns out she responded. She said like, this sounds great. Like, let me forward you on to our head of platform. So Niki and I were obviously ecstatic that day. And we quickly got on it, talked to the head of platform. They were interested. They wanted to see more styles. They wanted to get to know what exactly South Asian fashion was. And we gave them the laydown. But I'll say for about 4 or 5 months after that, it kind of just dropped off. And we were continually emailing them, trying to talk to them, but responses were getting later and later. And we were just like, what is happening? So Niki and I were like, we need to go up there. And we need to just pretend like we were meant to be there and see how it goes. So we emailed them saying that, hey, we're going to be in New York this weekend. We had no plans of actually being in New York that weekend. But we would love to meet if you guys have any availability. And sure enough, they said, okay, great. Like, come on in. And we were like, okay, booked our ticket for that week, just to go to that appointment. And so we went to their offices, brought in a couple styles. They loved them. And then the ball really started rolling. They were ready to put in an order. They were asking us if we can produce like 250, what our timelines were like, all that kind of stuff. And so then the next challenge that came before it even launched was us figuring out how to create clothing that was made for dry cleaning. Because what we didn't realize is that they have a very specific procedure they had to go through. And a lot of our occasion wear is heavily embroidered, has very detailed fabrics. So how are we going to make a Sani piece that was safe for dry cleaning, but still kept the integrity of Sani? So then that was a whole nother ball game, and I'm not done because there is another hurdle we had to cross after that.
But that whole time, right, we were pretending we were a much bigger company than we were. Like when they were asking about quantities and production timelines, we had some idea, having, tried to figure that out before, but the reality was we didn't know because we had never done that before.
So we were in production, and I was in my first year of college. Niki was over here right now. And we were working with our factory, who also, they hadn't seen an order this big from us either. We had sent them everything, and they told us that there were some difficulties with the outfits, right? So Niki, being Niki, was like, you know what? I'm going to fly to India and go check on them myself and make sure these outfits turn out perfectly, because that's what we need for Rent the Runway. She gets there. Do you want to tell this part?
Yeah, I get there, and this was another matter of Wednesday we get this very worrisome message, and Thursday I was on a flight to India, which is not cheap at all, but it was the sort of thing where we were thinking, but this partnership is worth so much more, so we've got to make it work. And so I arrive in India, and Rent the Runway got a total of 3 pieces from us, 3 different styles, I should say. And for 2 of the styles, the colors had been dyed, they had been dyed the opposite color. And it had just been, we backtracked. The owner of the factory was obviously just as upset as I was. And we backtracked, and we were like, where in this process did things go wrong? And it had literally been on 4 different papers that were being passed off. It was correct. And then on the last one, someone switched them up, and that caused this gigantic mess. And basically we had to start the order from scratch. We literally tried, what happens if we re-dye this stuff? In the other color, will it dye properly? But we had to start from scratch. And I was freaking out because I had to have a call with Rent the Runway saying we are not going to meet our deadline. And luckily, you know, so this is also where our family comes in. I mean, our family has been a massive part of all of this. So I can't downplay that. I can't say enough about how much they've done. But, you know, I was on the phone with my cousin, who's a part of the family business, and it was like 3 a.m. his time, but I was freaking out, and I was like, what am I supposed to say to them? Like, they're gonna see right through us, they're gonna know how small we are. And he coached me through, like, here's what you need to say. And he was like, I will be on that call if you need me to be on that call. He like looked over the email down to that. Like we've been lucky enough to like have the sorts of people like that we can go to during these times. And so sent that email, had the conversation with them. And really, you know, for 2 or 3 days until that call was scheduled, I was just worrying. I was a wreck. And the conversation really was, that's disappointing, but it's fine. Like, it's fine. And so that was it, right? And we were just like, this isn't gonna happen again. Like, you know, but we also realized that with our timelines, we needed to put in even more of a cushion. And we had been told that, again, by family members, actually. They were like, production always goes awry, always. And you need to build in the cushion. But Rent the Runway was used to working with these designers that could deliver these pieces much quicker than us. So I was like, I'm not going to tell them it's going to take 4 months because I don't want them to be like, forget it. I was like, I'm going to tell them 2 months and we're going to get it there in 2 months. But anyway, so restarted the order. Eventually it got done, and I was in India and checked every single one of the pieces. There were a lot of corrections to actually make because, again, the factory was freaking out. They incurred a bit of a loss. We took on some of that loss as well, but they were freaking out. We were freaking out. And finally it got to Rent the Runway okay. And it worked out.
Is the fun part, the launch part, which was a fun part.
Then we launched. It was wonderful. Rent the Runway was a fantastic partner for that, but it was a bit of a journey to get there.
Well, a couple things come out of the story, right? One is mentors, right? Like absolutely how critical those are at every part of your entrepreneurial journey, like not only when you're launching, but also as you're scaling, as you're growing. And it's mentors as trusted partners so that you can call them at 3 a.m. or there's someone who you may not have talked to in 4 months and you text and you're like, do you have the second, right? Those are really critical on your journey just to have that sounding board. And I think second is, you know, you're not out till you're out. And just to keep trying and to get over the hurdles. Yeah. Someone in the audience wanted to clarify. So y'all do manufacturing in India, correct? Yes. And I would assume that that's to have the authenticity of the products, correct?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And like the fabrics and trims that we look for are not available over here. So yes.
Nice. So, and then, so how do you go about, so some of the folks in the audience may need to find manufacturing partners. Yeah. Like, was that through relationships? Did y'all have like a bidding process? And as you look to scale and you were going kind of beyond your current manufacturer, how did you look to maybe go to a different one, or did they look to sort of enhance what they did?
Yeah, you want to start with that?
Yeah, so the very first manufacturer we had, we got that contact because we were telling everyone that we wanted to start Sani, right? It didn't matter if you were a grandmother. I was telling you that I was starting this fashion brand. And so a friend of my mom's,
our grandmother's friend's son in India happened to hear.
Yeah, happened to hear. And he had a boutique in India. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know what? I'll give you guys a chance and you can use the excess capacity in our factory. So obviously Niki and I were overjoyed, and that's where we made our first collection. Mm-hmm. And he really did give us a chance because he didn't want any huge order quantity. He was like, I'll let you make one of each piece. And then you tell me, like, I need to place an order for this piece. Yeah. And that is not something you find when you're looking for manufacturing partners. Yeah. But as Sani was growing, we started looking for more manufacturing partners. And it really was about going to different places, asking different people. I know Niki spent a day, you were at Hoscos, right?
Yeah, I was in a bunch of these like small designer areas in Delhi asking these people, do you have excess capacity? Can we like work together on stuff? Yeah. So it's been a lot of, again, reaching out to tons and tons of people and like almost door knocking in some ways. And then actually before this first factory said they'd work with us, we had also literally Googled a bunch of people. We had gone to this sort of wholesale market in Delhi that's called Chandni Chowk. We had gone there as well and had done some door knocking and had gotten samples made from like 5 different places for that first collection. Wow. And the guy whose factory we used for a while, he was one of those 5, and he was by far the best. And it was that process that helped us figure out here were the things that we weren't specific enough about. Here are the people who are going to cut corners. Here are the people we'll be able to communicate with easily, because I don't speak Hindi, neither does she. We can understand it, but speaking it, you know, I'm learning now, but you know, who can we communicate with well? And so that's what got us down to that one person. It's been the same thing sort of every single time that we've, you know, maybe this first factory hasn't had enough capacity to take something on, and we've had to look out again. And now we're at the point where our manufacturing partners for our occasion wear honestly aren't set up to scale. We did find a manufacturer for, you know, these new products that we have coming, which are more casual. So they don't need that occasion wear expertise, but we need to figure that out. That was actually a part of what this year was about. It was like, who is our next sort of manufacturing partner? Or I should say, you know, you really need more than one once you get to a certain level, because this guy we'd been working with for a while who did the Rent the Runway, he'd been with us from the beginning. He did this Rent the Runway order. After that order, he said he wasn't working with us again. And it was out of the blue. Like, it felt like he had become family, you know, over 2 years.
It was like a breakup.
It was like a breakup. Yeah. And he was just like, you all take so much more time than me just like running my own business. Your quality control is more. Us having to like WhatsApp video call you all the time takes up, you know, it takes up so much time. And I get that. Like, and I don't know how we could have changed that, but I get it. And so he didn't even give us an opportunity to really like take the time to find someone else. He was just like, this is it. And you know, I think in that moment I was like, we always need to have backups, and not only backups, but, you know, we need to maybe have these types of styles with one person, these type with another. And one of our uncles works at Lenovo and has been involved with a lot of the manufacturing stuff there. And he was like, we always have like many people on hand for this stuff. And he said, you're not going to know that until one, you need it, and you're at that certain size. But like, again, just talking to people, telling them like what our issues were, that's what's always helped us find kind of the next thing and get the right advice that we needed in the moment.
Cool. So we have a question on the chat that I'll bring into this next question that I'm going to ask y'all. So I want y'all to be able to talk about what happened after this Rent the Runway order, right? Because it was gangbusters. They sold out, they reordered. This was February, and then COVID hit, right? And everything changed. And y'all had to really sort of do some internal soul searching from a company perspective to figure out what was next for y'all. And so I know that, you know, that led to new products and new designs, but I would love for you to tell the audience sort of that pathway. And then the question that was in the chat was about, you know, the design and the manufacturer. Like, how is that partnership? Are you just like doing the whole design and handing it off? Is there any interaction there? And how did that change from the more formal wear to where you are now? So it's kind of like the next chapter of the story, right?
Yeah. So I'll hit on the design part first.
Sure.
So in terms of occasion wear, when we were starting off the design process for that, Obviously, Niki and I had no design experience. So what it really was essentially in the beginning was us going to fabric stores, finding fabrics that really spoke to us, then going to our factory and draping them on mannequins and communicating it via like just telling them like, I want this kind of silhouette with this fabric and this kind of skirt with this fabric. And obviously from there we evolved. So now we do portfolios beforehand, and we send it to them before we get there. And then we look at the fabric and go back to them. So it really is like a collaborative process, but we actually haven't figured out how occasion wear is going to work with Corona now. So that's something we're definitely going to have to learn about.
So everything's designed in-house.
Yes, everything is designed in the house.
Yeah.
For these new products that I think we're going to be touching on in a couple minutes, design for that was completely different than what it was for occasion wear. And it was because we had never gone down to the point where we were needing to source the specific silk, right? So was it a viscose? Was it 100% silk? We found this fabric made entirely of rose petals. We hadn't really dug into it to that extent. And then it was even to the point of embroidery. Okay, where is this embroidery going to get placed? Is it going to be on the pocket? If it's on the pocket, how wide is it? How tall is it? And then we had to do that all virtually and communicate it back to the factory in India, which was something we had never done before. But that's basically how the design process works for occasion wear versus how it's been working for the pajamas right now.
Yeah, but to answer now the first part of the question, which was about transitioning to have to do all this stuff. So like you mentioned, we launched in mid-February. Within like 2 days, our outfits were booked out until July, and Rent the Runway got in touch with us to put in another order. Then of course, all of that was halted. The rentals were canceled. I mean, you know, everything changed. And we spent a solid like month just, I couldn't tell you like exactly what we were doing.
The only thing I can remember is us going on a bike ride and just talking the whole time about what the heck does the future look like. And we didn't come to any conclusion after that bike ride.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, kind of after that first month, it was like, okay, what do we have control over right now? And like one thing happened to be brand awareness. So actually at the very, very beginning of the pandemic, we, you know, had just started being on TikTok, and we had posted this video and it had gone viral. Like, I think, you know, like 3 million views or something like that, and saw a lot of traction that video. So we're like, okay, what if we double down on TikTok? Let's like, you know, be creating these videos every other day, which takes so much time. So that is like actually, you know, a significant part of this brand awareness thing. Let's, you know, kind of clean up our social media presence a bit, and let's, you know, work on how our brand shows up. So that was one thing. A second thing was, let's kind of optimize what we do have to convert better. So like improve our website. Our website didn't have high quality e-commerce photos. And so, you know, things like that we identified, okay, how can we also optimize what we have? So when the time comes, you know, people will buy from us. And then the third thing was, what are some new things that we can make that are more relevant to the times? And so I don't know if you want to talk about that.
So we were, obviously occasion wear wasn't selling. So we were like, what stays true to Sani without being just something out of the blue? And when we really dug into it and like dug to the core of Sani, right? Our outfits are made for special moments. And originally that was Indian weddings or different festivals, that kind of thing. But then with the pandemic, the kind of special moments that we're having are changing, right? A special moment can be you sitting on your couch watching a movie while eating the best meal. And we were like, we can design for that too, right? Like it doesn't have to just be occasion wear, and that's not a digression from what Sani is really all about. So us thinking about that core mission is what led us to come up with the idea of pajamas and masks. So with pajamas, we've designed really luxurious multifunctional pieces. And the whole idea behind these pieces were that I'm going to be able to wear these to bed and then get up for my Zoom call, keep my pajamas on, and still look great. And so they're meant to be for your special moments that now post-pandemic may be more inside or socially distanced, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then the second product category that we came up with, we weren't planning on doing, right? So we saw all these designers coming out with masks and we were like, wow, this market is now saturated to the point of, I don't know what, but I was on a phone call with one of my professors from NC State, and I was just telling him how we were kind of in this design rut, didn't really know what the next product should be. And he said, you know what, you need to come up with a fashion functional mask. And we were kind of like, okay, but like, what do you mean by that? How do we do that? And he was like, here's what I'll do. I'll give you, so he worked with another professor who has a patent on a non-woven filter that they were using to make N95 masks at NC State. So he said, I'll give you my filter material, which is high quality, is amazing.
Very much in demand.
Very much in demand. If you can come up with something that's more than your basic mask. So then Niki and I kind of had this challenge that was quite fun as a COVID project of figuring out what exactly we could do with the mask that wasn't just your basic put it over the ear thing and call it a day. And we did everything from try and create t-shirts with masks built in. We were talking about like clear jackets with masks. And ultimately we landed on a design, which you guys are gonna see in a couple weeks, that we think really captures the essence of bringing something luxury to the table while adding convenience, in the sense that this mask can always be on you, but it's a fashion accessory. It's something that I'm gonna wear and make a statement. Yeah. And kind of have this, like, I don't know how to describe it, but like this item that I'm proud to wear and not just something begrudging that I just want to put on because I'm trying to be safe.
Yeah.
So now we're in this process of transitioning to those items, and once again, it's all about like getting these developed, figuring out what the launch plan is going to be like for these items, figuring out the marketing. But I think what we did do with these items is actually still stay true to Sani's core of creating things that are statement pieces, creating things for your special moments. And we're excited to see how it all comes together in the end.
And what I will also say is we had a lot of help this summer. So we had 3 interns, 2 of them from UNC. I think one of them, Pravina, is on this call. But they were a big part of also helping us figure all of this out, including like, what is the launch plan? We thought we were going to be able to launch it in July. So it was supposed to be during their internship. And then, it got moved back multiple months. So I will say it's been really helpful to kind of have more eyes on this stuff and more help as well.
And last thing, this entire summer, we were also in an accelerator.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that was also something we were doing while trying to figure out all this stuff, but it was actually really beneficial for us to be in it during the summer.
Yes.
That's awesome. So also about how you sort of have you two fully focused on it, but y'all are using other resources around you to really help give you that extra push and expertise that you need to push it forward, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know there was a question about how much we outsource. So like pretty much everything is in-house. So website design, marketing, we had hired someone to help us with branding. And that's actually been a little bit of a mess. And we quickly learned that like we could have done this to a certain extent ourselves. So anyway, pretty much everything is in-house except for literally making the clothes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to give y'all one final larger question, then we'll kind of round it out towards the end, but a question came up about funding. Yeah. And so how, y'all talked about reinvesting the profits, but for any startup capital, was that savings? Was it family? How have y'all funded the business, and how are y'all funding the business moving forward?
Yeah. So at the beginning, it was my savings, a small loan from our dad, and then, anything that I made from like any work was pretty much, except for like the little bit that I needed, it was pretty much funneled back. And so that's been kind of a big majority of the funds. We've also gotten a decent amount of grant money now. So like NC Idea grant, we had gotten the $10,000 grant. From the accelerator, we got some money. We enter competitions like the Draper competition, we got some from that as well. And so trying to take these opportunities for non-dilutive funding has also been big. And we were supposed to actually kick off a fundraising round in February, you know, when everything had happened around Rent the Runway. And we paused those conversations when everything happened. So, and it doesn't look like we will be fundraising for the near future, not even because it's like business is the worst and we don't think anyone will fund it anymore, but more so we actually feel like we have maybe more clarity on what we want to do now, and just don't think that, you know, venture financing or something like that is necessarily the right move for us right now.
But I think that's really smart, because I think sometimes people are like, oh, the next step is to go for funding. But like there are things that go along with funding, and other people having their own like goals for what they want to do with your business, right? And so I think carefully considering that is really good. It also sounds like you're really thinking of your manufacturers as partners, and so thinking through how that really benefits your business, and how how you need to think about those partnerships and engaging in them. So really good lessons. So I'm going to ask you one kind of lightning round question as we kind of wind down. But I want each of you to answer this if you could, but what is your hope for 2021, personal or Sani or both?
Ooh, I don't know my answer to this. You can go first.
Okay. Hope for 2021, I'd say, like, I mean, this is not necessarily the best thing, but I am so tied to Sani that I can't necessarily think of anything divorced from that. But for Sani, it's really that we can reestablish like product market fit, and really start churning out products again that get people really excited and feeling empowered when they wear it.
Okay, probably the same around those lines. I'm hoping for a successful new product launch.
Yeah.
And for us to, I think we've grown a lot doing this business together, and for us to continue to grow and figure out how to make this the best it can be.
Cool, that's awesome. So one of the things I think that's also important for everyone to hear is that this part that in entrepreneurship, a lot of times when I mentor and coach entrepreneur founders, they're like, why is it so hard? I'm like, because it is hard. Everyone would do it like if it wasn't hard, but there are just times when you feel like you're walking through water with cement shoes, right? And so having like the perseverance, y'all have done such a great job just to have perseverance and to continue to stay true to yourselves and your mission in Sani, get very clear about that, but to really be innovative in how you're approaching it with all of the changes going on. So it's been such a pleasure to hear your story. So do each of y'all have maybe just a final thought that you want to share with the audience? If any sort of final thing you want to leave them with?
My biggest thing is kind of going along what you just said. If it's meant to be, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And I have spent so many times feeling, why us? Why did this happen to us? And then I realized that's what it is to like start a thing. And that happens to business owners, whether they're 2 years in or 20 years in, there are always going to be things to figure out. So if it's meant to be, doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Yeah, I would echo what she says. And for anyone in the audience who wants to talk to us, has any questions, please feel free to reach out. We love talking to people. So if we can be helpful in any way, let us know.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's very generous of y'all. And thank you for taking your time and sharing your story. It's just, to me, it's really important for entrepreneurs to hear some of the messy stuff. Because sometimes it can be, why is it me? And you can get down. Yeah. And I think also the lesson, y'all have done a great job of partnering and getting interns from the schools. We have programs for that, the accelerators. So I just hope everyone in the audience sort of takes those lessons and can incorporate them into what they're doing. So Thank y'all both again. Excited to see
Oh.
these. I'm actually super excited to see the mask designs, because I go through the thing where I put on a mask and I'm like, oh, when can I take this thing off, right? And
Yep.
so, right. And so having something, and it's got the, P95 type filtering. So super excited about that. For our audience and community here, thank you so much for being here. Love the fact that everyone's here to engage. Thank you for all of the questions. They were wonderful. I feel like we could talk for like 2 hours with all the questions, and y'all, so this has been awesome. So I'm going to turn it back over to Keisha to kind of close us out.
All right, so yes, as everyone has mentioned, thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you to Niki and Ritika for your transparency, again, for your model of perseverance and how the journey still continues. I did drop their social media and their website in the chat, and I'll be sure to include that in their contact information, the best source, in the follow-up email. But also wanted to make sure that you know about the future events that we have going on. They will be posted, the Fireside Chat future sessions will be posted on our website, as well as through Launch Chapel Hill starting next month in October. And we do have Cheese Session tonight at 7 p.m. And we do encourage you to join our Slack community. So we created that community and building it out now to basically have a place to continue these conversations, share your journey as well, any questions that you have for our other community members. And again, just to create connections authentically and share resources as we can. So we thank you so much again for joining us, and we look forward to continue the conversation in future sessions. All right, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.